My name is Kara Bos, and I am a Korean American adoptee. I was adopted to America, let's say, when I was around 4 years old, and I currently live in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I have a Dutch husband, that's how I ended up here, and two children, a boy and a girl, and I've been living here now for 14 years. So I actually have Dutch citizenship as well.
This is What Next, the Adoptee Rights Podcast. I'm Gregory Luce, an adoptee rights lawyer and the executive director of Adoptees United. I'm also an adopted person, born and adopted in the District of Columbia. Each episode of What Next is about adoptee rights, whether we have them, demand them, or have already secured them. I talk with a wide range of adopted people, as well as our friends and allies about issues that impact us all. In this episode, C.S. Wright and I talk with Kara Bos, a Korean-born U.S. transnational adoptee who now lives with her family in Amsterdam. Our conversation is part of a recent event featuring issues around dual citizenship for transnational adopted people. You can watch the recording of that event on our YouTube channel, and there is a link to that in the show notes. Because of the time difference between the U.S. and Amsterdam, our interview with Kara was done separately from the event. It sounds like you are definitely an expert on like dual citizenship, dealing with three different countries.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. I mean,
expert, but I've definitely gone through a couple processes now.
Then when did you start thinking about pursuing Korean citizenship or whatever you could find to secure a better connection to the country?
Yeah, I actually have never been interested in getting Korean citizenship or nationality because I mean, I never have planned at this phase in my life to live there or to move there or to have a reason. Even the F4 visa, which adoptees are also allowed in Korea, I never thought to get that as well because I had no intentions of ever moving there and living there because I'm, pretty well planted here in Amsterdam with my children and they're going to school and, we have a pretty good life here. But as a result of all the tumultuous times I went through with the lawsuit and with my father's family and everything that resulted after my meeting with him as well. It kind of actually, I don't know, it gave me some kind of feeling because I've heard of other adoptees, mentioning it before that they wanted to kind of reclaim their citizenship, something that was taken back from them. So it was very symbolic to them. But for me, since I already had dual citizenship with a European Union passport and an American, like those are like the two most kind of powerful passports you could think of in the world. So there wasn't really any added value in my mind, at least at that point, to get also Korean citizenship. But I think through the lawsuit and the recognition that I received through my father and all the difficulty that I went through to get that, it kind of gave me this empowerment to where I realized that this was more significant than I had realized. And I think that that's just a part of the emotional journey you go through as you're, just trying to search for your identity and your roots, that you don't recognize some of these feelings at certain points, right, in your life. And especially if you're not at those pinnacle points. And once I was recognized as being his daughter, then I felt empowered because then I finally took back something that was taken away from me from when I was a child, and also throughout all the begging and pleading and everything adoptees do in order to just get scraps of information and paperwork, it's very demoralizing as a person and as a human being. And so in those moments too, I think it was kind of like this feeling of wanting to fight back. And when I won the lawsuit, and that was kind of like a byproduct as well, because obviously since he was a Korean man outside of being an adoptee, because he was a Korean man and I was considered his daughter, then I was allowed to apply for citizenship as well outside of adopting, rules and allowances. So for me, I think it was more related to that, the fact that I could reclaim what he never gave me and should have given me. And that's kind of, I think, what pushed me. And as well, because of COVID, it kind of relaxed a lot of the rules that were in place in order to get citizenship. Because before, you had to visit Korea multiple times. You had to stay there for a length of time in order to get certain steps finished in the process. And after COVID hit, they relaxed all of those rules to where you could just apply at the consulate here in the Netherlands. And the only rule that was kind of left is that you had to go within a year of finalizing the last pledge in your nationality You had to go there to finalize like your last 4 digits of your social security number is similar what they're requesting. And once I did that, then I could apply for a passport, and then I would officially be recognized as a Korean national. So that was like the only step that I had to take. And so because of the relaxation of those rules, it gave me more of another option where I thought, okay, now I'm going to try it and go for it.
I think a lot of people don't know about your lawsuit. Could you talk a little bit about that and what you accomplished through that?
Yes, I was in search for my mother, my biological mother, and as most adoptees, we don't have any kind of, information in our files. And I'd been to Korea multiple times at that point, and every single time I had visited my orphanage or a Holt, there would be, a new small little piece of paper that would kind of come to the surface that they were like, oh, we didn't realize, that this was in your file. And so that I was almost domestically adopted. Some of the details of how I was found kind of changed. I realized that my date of birth, or what I've been celebrating as my birthday, was actually the day that I was found supposedly in this parking lot, which I guess in retrospect, most adoptees have this as their kind of, birthday. Um, and so during this whole search process, I ended up coming to like a dead end. I couldn't find anything. My parents were unknown. And so then I resorted to DNA, which a lot of people do. And so I pretty much uploaded my DNA into every data bank there is. And I ended up with a match after, let's say, I think I started in 2000, and my daughter was 2 at the time. So that was 2017 is when I initially started my search. And then in 2019 is when I actually received a DNA match. So it was quite some time later. And it ended up, long story short, it ended up being my father's grandson who had done the test. He was studying at a university in England and happened to do the test just for fun with a roommate. And through him, I was able to make kind of the connections. He was very conservative and very protective of his family, so I didn't get names. I only got maybe a last name or a university that was studied at, or different professions. And then through just kind of investigative detective work myself, a lot of internet, a lot of searching, I managed to find out, that his grandfather was probably my father. But the family completely stonewalled me, wouldn't talk to me. They said that they spoke to my father, but they didn't. And they basically just tried to push me away and ignore me and make me just move on. And I think we as adoptees most often, we try to respect a lot of times, obviously, the culture and the place of origin, and also our birth families. But I think at this point, because I didn't hear it from the source, I didn't hear it from my father saying, like, I don't want anything to do with you. I couldn't accept it, because then I kept thinking, what if? What if it's just them and not him? And so I wanted to hear it from him. If he said it, and the only thing I wanted, I didn't even want a relationship. I just wanted, a conversation just to know who my mother was. Then, yeah, I would have accepted it if he would have said that to me. But that never happened. And so then via, I managed to find a lawyer, and the idea even that I could possibly file a paternity suit. And my lawyer was willing to take my case. And I mean, in a lot of, yeah, a lot of scenarios, most people didn't think it'd be possible to win, because, with adoption, your adoption is severed, your relationship is severed. There is no, mother or father left in Korea. And so the family court, though, they just literally took it as it is. So with the evidence that I had, and with different messaging systems where they all, kind of said that he's potentially your father, then they forced him to take a DNA test. And in the end, it was positive. And so the judge declared me as his daughter, and that he had to recognize me and take me into his family registration in Korea. And then the byproducts for that I was obviously able to claim citizenship and also inheritance.
So you would then, for people who don't know, in Korea, there's these family registries, and even adoptees are assigned a particular family,
Yes.
but you must have two. Or does the second one supersede the first one?
Well, I mean, I don't think at least I don't know, but it has happened before that adoptees were still on their family register in Korea, and then they were adopted out and they were never taken off. But I don't know if I was ever on one, but at least the one I had was made from Holt. So it's just an orphan registry, they call that, in order to make you an orphan so that you can be adopted abroad. Apparently, I still had a form of Korean nationality that was never expunged completely on the Korean side. So when I was going through this process of being taken up into his registry, they had to basically expunge again my Korean nationality in order to make me really officially like that I was adopted and sent out of the country, and then re-officially put me into his registry. And then they didn't know what name to give me. So that took a really long process as well. And in the end, they gave me his last name with my American name. So in Korea, on my passport, it says Oh Kara.
Interesting.
So I have a completely different identity in Korea in that register.
And do you now have a Korean passport? I think when we talked or traded emails maybe a couple months ago, you weren't finally done with this process, but are you at this point?
Well, that was also another surprise, is because I was trying to make the appointments in Korea because that's what I'd last been told when I did this a year ago, or more than a year and a half ago. They told me I had to go to Korea to finish the process. And apparently 6 months ago, because I called the embassy just this last week because I couldn't get an appointment in Korea with immigration. And then they're like, oh no, 6 months ago we changed the rules and you can actually apply for the passport here. And those last 4 digits of your social security number, then you just get those in Korea, but you don't essentially need them unless you're going to, work and live there. So I was like, what? So I had an emergency passport because last year when I was supposed to go, I had broken my ankle right beforehand, so I couldn't travel. And then I got an emergency passport in order to extend the year period. Because if you didn't finish out the nationality within the year of your pledge of basically saying that I won't use an American passport or any other form of identity when I'm in Korea, I will abide by Korean laws and etc. And once you make that pledge, you have to finalize it within a year. And so the emergency passport extended that year until this year. And then, like I said, I was trying to make the appointment with immigration, and then it was impossible because you have to have an ID number in order to make an appointment. And if you live overseas, obviously, and I don't have that. And if you live overseas, you're also not allowed to make an appointment. So it was a big mess. And so then they changed the rules again. So now we can apply for a Korean passport. So now I'm just waiting for it to be shipped basically back to the Netherlands from Korea. So within 2 weeks, I should actually receive my Korean passport.
That just sounds so complicated.
Yeah.
And, I mean, was the attorney helping you with this, or the attorney really was about the paternity?
No, the attorney just helped with the paternity suit and getting me into the family registry. Those legal aspects she definitely helped me with, but for the Korean passport side, that was all my efforts, and then also the help of other adoptees and different people who have already gone through the process as well, who kind of could help with different things. But like I said, again, like these kind of things change and then you're not always informed. And so then, then I informed another adoptee about like, hey, like you wrote this, document and it gave all the steps of what you should do with the, getting your Korean citizenship. And then that was still the old rules. And so that's what I thought it was. And then when I messaged her, I was like, hey, they changed the rules. She was like, yeah, I know. I got my passport last month. I was like, oh. Like, oh, I wish you would have known that.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, that's also the issue, right? Is all this information is not like bundled in one spot that every, kind of Korean adoptee at least could go to like this one website. That's kind of what you would hope. And they like, this is what you have to do and make it very simple. It still remains complicated.
It was interesting to hear that when you're in Korea, you must represent yourself as Korean, at least legally.
Mm-hmm.
Is that unusual? Or do you know?
I don't know. I just know that that's the rules to, you're not allowed to use, like, I cannot use an American passport anymore in South Korea, for
Huh.
example. Yeah.
Yeah. But you essentially, when you get your Korean passport, you'll have three.
Yes, that's true.
Great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I bet 20 years ago, you wouldn't have imagined the same thing.
No, definitely not. No, but
Yeah.
it's really just that feeling of taking back what was lost. And yeah, it's really, for me at least, it's very symbolic. I know for others, maybe it really is so they can live and work there. And it's fantastic that it's possible, because there's a lot of countries where it's not even possible to do this. So in that respect, Korea is, a bit more advanced for adoptees, even though it's a very messed up system still and it's very complicated and confusing. It's still at least possible, where I know in a lot of other origin countries, it's not.
Right. CS, do you have any thoughts on, I mean, would you want to go through this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I really love that you're talking about the fact that you had to do so much of this on your own, the sort of the passport side, because I feel like I feel like a lot of people don't understand just the amount of labor intercountry adoptees put into filling out paperwork, understanding just the paperwork on their own, because it's so expensive the other route, right? To get an attorney and to get somebody to help you. And so
Mhm.
we literally become sort of like little mini immigration officers for ourselves, working the system. So it's really interesting to hear you go through that. And I hadn't heard that they had changed the rules because that was something that I had looked at a little bit about the passport thing, and I was like, oh man, I don't know. The commitment to like have to go to the country and like have to fill that out, that's like it's a lot, So I've sort
Mhm.
of put it off. But it's really interesting to hear those updates because that kind of I don't know, maybe I'll do it. That sounds like something that could be interesting. So
Yeah, and the other thing you have to know is that you have to have a Korean translator to, I mean, they don't,
mhm.
I mean, at least from what I know is I used my Korean teacher. She was wonderful and helped me out, where I know other adoptees have actually hired a Korean translator and they had to pay like per word, and it's very expensive then. So
Yeah.
it depends. And someone was told that they had to have an official Korean translator, which my Korean teacher passed for being official as long as she like shared her identity. So that could be also a rule that changed that I don't know about. But I know
Mhm.
when I applied, at least it wasn't necessary to be like this official, having some kind of maybe she has this certificate that you need. I don't know, but and then if you don't do it within that year, like this one adoptee I know, she like had to do the whole process all over again.
Yeah.
And that's really killing and brutal, because I also had the problem because you have to have an FBI background check done as a part of the
Mhm.
process as well, and your fingerprints. And they have to be valid within, I think it's like less than 6 months in order to apply as well. But the FBI were like super delayed in getting any of the background checks back to people at this point when I was doing it. And so I literally made it within like less than a week of the time. And I had to have my sister like FedEx it from, and it costs like over 200 euros in order to get it FedEx to me on time in order to take it to the
Mhm.
embassy here. So these are extra costs, which of course I didn't expect, or,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are things as
Interesting.
well that, yeah.
And I definitely can feel that. I mean, I went through that process even here in America. I was trying to get a passport through had to get a new certificate of citizenship. We lost the one that I'd gotten. And so I kept delaying. And at the United States Passport Office, you can delay it for like 6 months or something. But after you delayed it after 6 months, I'd already paid all the fees and everything to get it going. They're like, okay, you've got to start the process all over again. And it was just like, oh my God. And that whole thing was, I mean, you just lose tons of
Yeah.
money and time and expense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you had to get a
crazy.
FBI, a US FBI background check and then provide that to Korea?
Yeah. So even though I'm a Dutch citizen, like, and I did it through my Dutch passport as well, but because I'm also American, I had to have also my American FBI background check as well. So I had to send both a Dutch background check and also a US one. So that
And
was a
did
bit more complicated.
and did those have to be translated as well into Korean?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe, but I
Because
don't remember.
yeah, for U.S. immigration law, the intercountry adoptees, all of their documents in their children have to be translated, and it costs a fortune. It's a similar system where they're charging. They have to be official translators, and they charge by by the content, usually by the word,
Yeah.
and it's extremely expensive. And
Yeah.
luckily, when I have a case, for instance, involving an intercountry adoptee, it's already been translated when they enter the country, so I don't have to do it again. But it is one of those costs that are not often realized, and sounds like that's the same with Korea.
Yeah, definitely for the main documentation that was necessary. And I think the Dutch and the American FBI background check, I think English is one language that they do accept for these kind of official documents. But they also had, I think, like, how in some marriage certificates as well, then they have like 20 different, the most official languages, they have them also as on the back. And I can't remember if that was the case with these two documents, or it was just because it was English that it was a accepted language then from the Korean government.
So this is an odd question, but are your kids old enough to understand what you're doing?
I don't think with the Korean citizenship, no. I
Yeah.
mean, they understood a bit. I mean, they're 9 and 11, almost 12 now. Obviously, this happened back in 2020, the whole lawsuit and everything. So then it was, it's 4 years ago now. So yeah, I think that was a bit harder for them to understand. I think the worst part for them was the fact that I was gone. Like I was
Wow.
gone quite often, and that was really yeah, difficult. Yeah,
But
especially for my
obvious, right. But obviously it really impacts them as well to have a mom who is a triple citizen. And whether that allows them to acquire that citizenship, I guess, is country by country. But I think that's such a
yeah.
thing we often overlook is, especially as adoptees, we forget that this is impacting our kids. Our adoption status is impacting our kids. Yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah, those are definitely things I've been confronted with. I went recently to the first Dutch adoptee conference here in the Netherlands, and that was one of actually the topics was the second generation from adoptees and how their kids have been impacted, and especially some of the older Korean adoptees who now have children, anywhere from 30 to 40 years old even, and or 20 to 30 years old, and how that's affected them even when you think that you're kind of you're the generational stop, you hope, of the trauma
Exactly.
because you're confronting it, you're doing something about it, and you're not just ignoring it or burying it. But you can still see some of the obviously after effects of what trauma, yeah, how it continues in the family line. They say something about 7 generations, I think, that trauma is in the in the body and passed on. But yeah, I hope that it's very minimal to mine.
Right. You mentioned I'm not sure if there is a difference. Is there a difference between getting a Korean passport and securing Korean citizenship? Or does one depend on the other?
Yeah, one depends on the other because if you don't have obviously the Korean nationality, then you can't apply for the passport to claim citizenship then, I guess. So yeah, as far as I know, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah,
But
and I guess the reason why I asked, it sounded so complicated in your case to establish paternity. I'm wondering what Korean adoptees have for proof of family registry that would allow them to claim Korean
Yeah,
citizenship.
that was gonna be my question because like for me, I don't have, as far as I know, I don't know that I have. I mean, I'm sure somewhere, but I've done a lot of the digging and the trying to figure out connecting, and nothing has come up. So
mhm.
I'm curious what that looks like for adoptees that haven't really found a connection when they're doing their search, I guess.
Yeah, they changed the rules in Korea for adoptees that you can do it. You just have to basically prove that you've been adopted. You have like your adoption
Oh, okay.
certificate through Whole or whichever agency you were adopted through. And if you prove that you're an adoptee, then you also have a right to claim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Got it.
that's a law that they changed for Korean adoptees. And then you're also not you don't have to do military service. I think there's like a couple hours or something online or something maybe that men have to
Mhm.
do. So
Oh,
that is something
interesting.
that is something to be aware of, but you don't actually. But that's and whether or not our kids as adoptees can have Korea citizenship, that's also something that's unknown still, as far as I know.
Mhm.
But like I would never pass the Korean passport on to my son, for example, because I would never want him to be in in the military there, obviously, or have any of those kind of yeah
That
effects of the Korean nationality.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had because I've heard that about the requirement for military service, and it sounds like maybe they've relaxed that for adoptees if they have to just do something online, or
Yeah,
maybe
that's
they're too
from
old or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's mainly what I've understood, but I haven't heard of Korean adoptees being able to pass that citizenship on to their children, at least, as far as I know. I don't think that they obviously took that into account either, right? I mean, this is all kind of like they're learning as they're going, as people are, standing up and trying to speak out for adoptee rights. So that could be something that would eventually also be in place, given the fact also that Korea is like, their population is diminishing.
Right. Yeah. So since you're both immigration officers, because of you, uh, so what's your understanding of the difference between what you've done and getting just an F4 visa, which I've heard of in Korea as well?
Yeah, the F4 visa, you're still obviously you're not a Korean citizen, you're not a Korean national. So you have kind of all the luxuries of still being a foreigner. So there's different advantages for foreigners, I think tax related and also regarding, I don't know, probably discounted phones or this or that, for foreigners, or visitors or tourists. But if you're a Korean, if you're a Korean national like I am, then you can't claim those. Like also like tax rebates and those kind of things for like if you shop there, you don't get like the tax refunds back, those kind of things. And then then you can still work and live there, open bank accounts. Even the one thing I don't know for sure is buying property. Like if you have an F4 visa, I'm not absolutely certain that you can buy property compared to if you're a citizen. I know for sure like I can as a Korean citizen as well. That makes the whole process a lot easier. But if you have an F4 visa, I'm not sure if that right is extended or not.
Yeah, I'll try to look into that. So maybe we have an answer.
It's just really interesting that you've gone through that process, especially several times. It sounds like, to get it. So I'm really glad that they're opening that up more to adoptees, quite honestly, especially with everything that's coming out. I hope more countries will do that for adoptees as well, quite honestly.
Yeah, that was one question I had, and I'm not sure. I mean, you're you're an American adoptee from Korea, but you also live in the Netherlands, which has a really active part in prompting the Korean government to investigate their past adoptions. I'm wondering if you're involved in that at all,
Yeah,
and where you're coming from with that, whether it's from the Dutch side or from the U.S. side.
the TRC that's initiated by DKRG in Denmark. Or Norway, sorry, Norway. And yeah, no, the Dutch are also involved. And so I'm a part of their organization, which is the NLKRG,
Hmm.
the Dutch Korean Rights Group. And Norway obviously initiated it with Peter Muller and Boon Young. And from what I understand, at least my case was taken up in the original 34, I believe it was, that initiated the whole process. And then after that, they've been able to prove enough to allow even more files and cases in the investigation. And they've also been able to extend it even for another year. But yeah, I mean, it was just initially wanting to obviously support that because it's one of the first, I mean, there's what is it? Not Haiti, but is it Sri Lanka? I think they also started their own
Right.
investigation as well.
Hmm.
And so yeah, Korea obviously they have one of the longest histories of adoption, and yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what in the end what the findings are. And I know at least with Peter, and because of his legal background as well, that I think helps a lot. And because he's a man, I mean that's just the patriarchal society in Korea as well. I think that makes an influence as well in order to be able to get this, progressing, and hopefully it'll result in something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really hope that it'll change some perspective in Korea as well. And that they'll understand the reason why adoptees keep coming back, and the reason why we're trying to have access to our files and gain this right to identity and origin, as so many inter-country adoptees are trying to do. But it sounds and it seems like it's just like a sound wall. It just keeps reverberating back again because there's not a single country yet that has completely truly opened up for inter-country adoptees to be like, yes, this is a right you own, and giving full access and giving us also on equal terms. And I think that was what was different, like with my lawsuit, because it was, otherwise he would have never had to have any contact with me. He would have been protected. If the adoption agency would have contacted him and said, your daughter's searching for you, can she contact you? And he said no, then it would be finished, right? And then through this paternity suit, it was a completely different route, but it allowed me to gain that access without having to have someone give me, permission from an adoption agency. And that's the most infuriating thing, I think, for adoptees, is that they constantly have to beg and plead with people to, give them this innate right. Where doing it through the court system, it was just very black and white for the court then. It was like, okay, you have all of this evidence. Yeah, he has to do this test. Yes, he's your father. So, of course they can't tell him he had to meet me or anything, but I at least had the access. I could gain, medical records. I could, gain information to who he was. And I would have never had that if it was up to the adoption agency and the privacy laws that protect biological parents.
Yeah, that's such a universal thing with adopted people, is that, and you also internalize it as well, where you think that you aren't entitled to it because why would you be if it's so hard to get?
Yeah.
And then so
Yeah.
you sort of give up. Yeah.
Exactly, because you keep getting no's, and all of those no's are also, and then, and I mean, I even got, a lot of um criticism from other adoptees because like I wasn't respecting the culture, I wasn't respecting this, I wasn't, giving, I should be more low key, I shouldn't be forcing my way into things, and doing it like an American. Um and but I thought, but none of those other ways work. There's not one way to Rome, as they say, and none of the other paths worked. I mean, I was just continually denied, and I said, when do we just keep allowing that to happen? And I still have no regrets, because if I wouldn't have forged forward, I would to this day not know that he's my father, because he's passed away. Like 6 months after I met him, he died. So like I would have never known if I
Right.
wouldn't have pushed forward. So these are things, and that's the point too, is most of us adoptees are getting older, and our parents are also getting obviously older, and we're losing the time and the chance to be able to have any access to them. And privacy laws and agencies are in our way.
And then I assume on top of that is the same thing we have here in the U.S. for the domestic adoptees is this, it's a patriarchal culture, but also the shame that was put upon mothers who weren't married.
Yes.
And that's still an
Yeah.
issue in Korea.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm going there the end of this month actually again, and yeah, I'm hoping to have like one last chance to maybe say something to her on television, if she's even alive. Of course, that we don't know as well. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've constantly, tried to say, like, don't be ashamed. Like, and especially now that he's passed away, then I think like, what else, you have nothing to lose now, even if it's in secret, like I don't need to meet her in public or anything. And that's what I've continually said, like, even if it's in secret, that you at least can meet and know your story. And I mean, it's a shame that that even has to be part of the something we have to say, but it is what it is. So yeah.
It sounds very familiar. I was going to ask you if you ever had a relationship with your father, but it sounds like you either didn't have the time or didn't want to have a relationship.
Yeah, I honestly, I have no idea, because after that, the family just basically told me like he doesn't want contact with you. It was never from his mouth himself. But yeah, I mean, in the like 7 minutes that I spent in the same room with him, where I could say anything to him, he wasn't really open or willing to really have a relationship, let's say. But that's understandable under the circumstances that we came together, right? Like I didn't want any of that. Like I wanted to just meet in like a one-on-one space together and just talk, and then let it be done. But that wasn't allowed. So that's what came.
I hadn't realized that you had appeared, you must have both appeared in court at the same time and you had these 7 minutes.
No, he didn't appear at court at all. He didn't have to. His lawyer didn't also even show up. No, he met me at my lawyer's office like the Monday after the trial, where it was confirmed for sure that that the judge said he has to recognize me. And then he came to my lawyer's office, and it was supposed to be just him and I. We were supposed to meet. And then he showed up with bodyguards, and he had like complete facial covering. And he stayed for like 5 minutes at my lawyer's office. And she was kind of translating, but he like denied everything and acted like he didn't know what he was even doing there, which could be true. I don't know, because he thought he went for just like a health checkup. He didn't think that he went for a paternity test. The family said they didn't even tell him that any of this happened until like that day of the trial, like when it was pronounced that I was his daughter. So he only had basically 2 days before he met me in order to process everything. So I don't know. I have no idea. Like I wish I could have been obviously a fly in the wall to hear how those conversations went and what they said to him, because obviously how you approach someone at that age, he was 85, and how you approach someone at that age in a patriarchal culture, where he was kind of really the man in the family in his whole life, I think, because he was very wealthy and with status. Yeah, I don't know. It could have gone differently. I could only presume, right? Because it's all
Right.
about context and how you word things and how you talk to somebody. But they chose to do it this way. And I mean, I understand as well, because I was this outsider who, pushed a lawsuit on them in the end. And yeah, they didn't expect that to happen. They thought I would just go away, but I didn't.
I just can't imagine having to deal with all the secrecy, all the shame that goes along with wanting to know your full identity, and then your father shows up in a mask?
Yeah, he had like the mask and sunglasses and a hat. He was completely unrecognizable. And then he had like these two beefy like bodyguards with him, and they like scanned the room, like everything. It was like a movie.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, I can laugh about it now,
No,
but
I know. I
obviously,
can laugh at it too
like,
because probably,
it's
I get some privileges being of an adoptee, and I can imagine it, but not
yeah,
an inter-country adoptee. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, I mean that was like the I could never imagine that, that would happen. They basically called my lawyer like right before he arrived. They said we're in the basement, and the only way he's coming up is if he has these two bodyguards with him in the parking garage in the basement. And if you don't agree, then he's leaving. But I was like, this is like my chance to meet him, chance to ask him who my mother is. This is it. I can't back down and say no now. And she was furious, though. She was just like, "What? Do you think we have knives? What do you think we're gonna do to him?" Like,
Right.
yeah, we're two small Korean women. But yeah, no, that was pretty ugly.
Yeah.
But that's what propelled me, obviously, even more so to feel this kind of, empowerment after the fact that I had her, because you are completely powerless, right? And especially with adoptees without citizenship as well. I mean, everything is constantly just being predetermined for you, and you have no power over your situation, and you never did. And so this was like the moment that I gained that power back over my life as an adult. And then gaining my citizenship was the moment that I regained power and took back what was lost from that 4-year-old girl who was abandoned.
I love ending it on that. I think that's such a perfect thing to end with. So, Kara,
Yeah.
thanks so much for talking with us. If someone was interested in gaining Korean citizenship, is there a place or a good resource available that you would recommend?
Yeah, that's the difficult thing, is because every single state, even in America, is different, and every country is different and how they do it. So the only thing you can do is basically, reach out into the adopting networks in your community and where you live, and see if anyone else has gone through the process, and obviously speak to the consulate or embassy that's closest to you. That's really the only advice I can give, because anything I've done is not going to be the same as for, whoever is in America who might be watching, or anywhere else in the world. The Netherlands is even different than Belgium, which is like literally just a few hours away. And I hear in different states in America, it's the same. Like they give you the runaround, and it's very unclear. And some of the states don't even know how to do it sometimes. If it's not like a bigger consulate or embassy, then they
Mm-hmm.
don't even know for adoptees what to do, because it's kind of like this, unwritten rule that's just kind of, been passed down from up high, but then not really thought through, and how to actually process it. The same with my verdict, right? With becoming my father's daughter, like that's why it took so long to be taken up into his registry, because they're like, this has never happened before. We don't know how to call her. We don't know what to write in his registry. So yeah, yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah, I think the lesson here is to persevere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And be
Yeah.
denied, so it makes you angry.
Yeah, exactly.
What Next is a production of Adoptees United, Inc., a national nonprofit organization dedicated to equality for all adopted people. It is produced and hosted by me, Gregory Luce. Check out our past episodes and subscribe to any future episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, any donations to Adoptees United are tax deductible. So consider supporting this work by donating to Adoptees United at adopteesunited.org/donate. See you next time.